If summer heat and activity left your lawn with bare patches and thin spots, then get Scott's Turf Builder Grass Seed. Fall's cool air and warm soil make it the best time to grow grass. Use Turf Builder Grass Seed to grow thicker, greener grass, guaranteed. It contains Scott's exclusive Water Smart Plus coating that absorbs 2 times more water than uncoated seeds. Feeds to jumpstart growth and protect seedlings against disease. And Scott's is the official lawn care company of Major League Baseball. Fall's the best time to grow seed and repair your yard. Pick up a bag of Scott's Turf Builder Grass Seed today. This is the Scott's Yard.
Want an easy way to see if you could save money on car insurance? Geico gives you 3. Call 1-800-947-AUTO. Go online to geico.com or stop by the Geico office nearest you. 3 ways you could save 15% or more.
News of all sorts today.
Yeah.
We got serious conversation. We got light conversation. We got tons of games, more than anything else. We had another good baseball game, a crazy baseball game last night. The starting pitching has become like an afterthought in this postseason, but I think that will change now. We basically saw 2 game 7s. So we saw
we did
2 all-deck-on-hands games.
It's all decks on hand.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're going to make that move a little sooner than you want to because, you got to win to move on, lose.
I don't know that Greinke comes out of that game last night if it's the game 1 rather than a game 7.
Yeah, I think I would agree there. And plus, in a game where you're getting Verlander against Sale, Houston and Boston, I mean, man, you're just praying those guys go into 7-8 innings. We'll see.
Yeah, and so we don't want to bury the starting pitcher in Major League Baseball prematurely. But I do think it's worth pointing out that the 2 biggest stars in the sport are the slugger and the legendary starter.
Sure.
I mean, the great matchups of all time are when you see, and again, before our era, you and I are old enough to have seen it, but you grow up hearing about and reading about Sandy Koufax and Bob Gibson and these legendary games, and in our lifetime seeing guys like Oral Hershiser and Pedro Martinez and others who are the all-time great pitchers pitching with these great runs and everything else. You got that starter, and he's not coming out and throwing 4 1/3.
No.
Because you got 5 guys in the bullpen who each throw 98 miles an hour.
No, it was that great starter that went, that big bopper would hit, and then Mariano Rivera coming in and shutting it down.
Right.
It was the 3 guys to me. The pitcher going, a long distance, the closer coming in and doing exactly what his name was.
Right.
And the big guy hitting the home runs.
Before Rivera, there was Dennis Eckersley doing that. Yep. Before Eckersley, there was Goose Gossage and Sparky Lyle and guys like
Just
that.
Get it to the closer. Get it to the closer. Now it's get it to the one of 5 setup men we have.
Get it through the lineup twice.
Yeah.
That's basically the starting pitcher's job, is to get it through the lineup twice. We'll see. So again, I hope we have Chris Sale and Justin Verlander today in the 8th inning. I really do. There's a great pitchers.
I do as well. I mean, listen, the game isn't ruined by any stretch. It's different than what we grew up on. For people that are younger, it's what they kind of know now. So it's just, but it elongates things, and you got all it just, to me, anyway, I'm just telling you what I'm rooting for. Yeah.
I'm rooting to see some great starting pitching and tight ball games and move them along a little bit, and we'll see what happens. One way or another, you got 8 teams left, and Timmy Kirchin said it on our set earlier this morning, and I agree. I will not be flabbergasted if any of the 8 teams win.
No.
And he made the point, we will not say that with 8 teams remaining in the NFL. Mm-mm. And we will not say that with 8 teams remaining in basketball.
Oh,
for sure.
Gosh, no.
I mean, not even close. We might not be saying that when we get to the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
And in football, by the time we get to the playoffs, we'll probably have identified 5 teams.
Maybe that could win the Super Bowl.
What is this? 12 teams that make the playoffs in the NFL, right? So of those 12, what is your prediction of on an average year? Right now, how many do we go into the playoffs saying, these teams could win it? And how often does someone else win it?
Yeah.
Like, how often does someone who isn't one of those teams
the wild card come in and win it,
there's no team. Like, right now, probably the longest odds on the board, I'm guessing, would be Arizona, but I don't know that for sure. And I don't think anyone in the world would be stunned if the Diamondbacks win this thing.
I would agree with that. So it would not be shocking for any of them, but the Indians will win.
All right. Now, I mentioned, and you heard parts of it in the – go ahead. You had something there?
No.
Parts of it in the Open that I said we got news from all the sports. And there's 2 things I haven't gotten to at all today.
Okay.
So let me get my hockey stat in.
Oh, yeah.
I've been trying to get – I've had the hockey stat on the rundown since the 6 o'clock hour.
I can follow up with some others.
So in all of the records in sports that I would have bet you would never be broken. There are some records that will most certainly never be broken. Cy Young's wins record, and there are records that will definitively never be broken. And then there are ones that I think will never be broken, like Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hit streak. I can't sit here and tell you it cannot be broken.
Boy, that would take. Yeah,
I don't think we'll live to see it.
I agree with that.
But it's obviously possible, and there are others. Cal Ripken's record is a good one. Like, I don't think that'll ever be broken, but it might. If you had told me that Gordie Howe's record for most games played in the National Hockey League was going to be broken, I would have told you I don't expect that. Mr. Hockey, who kept coming back and was playing well into his 40s and came back and played that last year with the Hartford Whalers. You know, this is a guy who started his NHL career in the 1940s and was still playing well into our lifetime.
Yeah.
Well, I remember him coming back and playing for the Whalers. I think I was in high school. What year was that he played in Hartford? I mean, I wasn't a little kid. And this is a guy who was playing in the 40s when my father was a little kid. And so if you had told me that his record for most games played was going to be broken in my lifetime, I would have said, no way. It's going to be broken this year. Jaromir Jagr is signing to play in Calgary. He's 45 years old. And if he makes it through the season, he will break the all-time record for most games played in National Hockey League history.
That's incredible. And he played in Hartford in 79-80 at 51 years old.
Yeah, he was in his early 50s, and so 79-80. So I was, 11, 12 years old. So I remember it.
Yeah, the longevity in that sport.
In those days, they also played without helmets.
Yeah.
So, I still remember him with his gray hair skating around the ice, looking like Paul Newman in Slapshot.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But he was still playing.
Yeah.
And this guy was playing in the 1940s.
46 was his first season.
And so that was Mr. Hockey. That was Gordie Howe, who died a couple of years ago. And one of the legendary, beloved, significant figures. One of my observations when we did the show in Toronto that time, as one who has not spent a lot of time in Canada in my life, only a little. I've not been up there much. But when we spent a few days there, were how many people we met named Gord.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not a coincidence. They're all named after Gordie Howe, right? He's like the most beloved figure in the history of his sport. This guy's going to break his record.
It is amazing. It is amazing he's been around that long to do it.
Jagr is 45.
45 years old.
And if he plays the season, he will break the record. I think he needs 60 games or something like that.
Incredible.
So he is going to break the record.
And going from old to young, Connor McDavid, last year's MVP, is the first player in Oilers history to record a hat trick opening night. How about this? Sidney Crosby, who was the one, Conn Smythe was a playoff MVP. Connor McDavid was your MVP for the season. Austin Matthews was your Rookie of the Year. All of them scored on opening night. It was the first time in NHL history, 3 different reigning winners of those awards all scored on their team's opener. Connor McDavid is just incredible. And Matthews, again, Rookie of the Year, what he's done. So hockey is in a good spot. Sidney Crosby now, I mean, I think of him so much. He's 30 years old now. I mean, he's that wily.
He's not the kid anymore.
Yeah, and he's also not Jagr either.
Correct.
I mean, right in the middle of that, huh?
Sid the kid. The concussion stuff will be the stuff to watch.
Yes.
With a lot of players like him at this point. But one way or another, hockey is back and better than ever. We are presented by Progressive Insurance, comparing rates to help you save. Now that's Progressive. Call and click today. Find out how much Progressive could save you. I also mentioned, and they put it in the open, everything about basketball is about to change. And I can give you that from the NBA side or the college basketball side. Which one do you want first?
NBA.
From the NBA, we're hearing a lot of talk about the playoff format. Steph Curry doing interviews in China in the last day or two. I'm not sure exactly when he said this. Most of the attention went to other comments that he made. But the really interesting one to me that he talked about was the concept that a lot of guys out west are in favor of balancing out the playoffs, if you will. That basically, rather than seeding the teams 1 through 8 and 1 through 8 in your NBA playoffs, as has been the case as long as there have been 16 teams, and it's always been East and West, that they should just reseed all of the teams because it is just not fair because the balance of power is so extraordinary in the West.
Right.
And one of the questions then, many of the questions will be about logistics, that you just would have so many teams traveling so much. That's the way they started it initially, for sure. At a time when traveling was a lot more complicated for teams than now. You didn't want the Lakers and the Celtics. I mean, A, you want them in the finals anyway, but B, you don't want them traveling 3,000 miles in a 7-game series in the first round of the playoffs or whatever it is. So he was talking about that. Before I play you Wendy's reaction, would you be in favor of changing the way they organize the NBA playoffs?
No, because again, it's cyclical. I mean, right now the West is the dominant conference. So that at some point will shift again. I don't know when. Some dominance lasts longer than others, but I'm not going to do that. And then you throw in the travel. If Golden State all of a sudden has to play Washington,
right?
So I mean that would be crazy.
Really long trips, and you don't want to have that all through the playoffs. You generally are only going to have with one round.
I think people at times are a prisoner of the moment and say, "Oh, the dominance is of the West now. We need to change things." No, we don't. Just let it kind of all play out.
It does feel as though this has been prolonged, and it feels like it's going further in that direction, and it feels like there are players making decisions based on that, right? About, let's stay in the East or let's go.
Well, no, they're not. They're all going to the West.
Yeah,
what kind of sense does that make? One of the greatest teams of all time is Golden State, and everybody's going West.
Yeah.
The top players have gone West, so that debunk that.
Yeah. That's debunked. Consider
it debunked. It's debunked.
It's interesting. Brian Windhorst brought up a really interesting point when this was raised to him. He said there's no way it's going to happen, and we haven't even brought up the reason why.
Are we going to be real?
Yeah.
Let me tell you why there's never going to be a reseeding, or like where it's going to be 1 through 16. Because the East, there's more bigger markets in the East than there are in the West. And the NBA is never going to want Salt Lake City, Portland, and Memphis to make it ahead of Philadelphia, New York, and Washington. That's just the reality of it. And they can say it's about travel. That's just the reality. Also, to change a rule in the NBA, I mean, just being real here, not the merits of the idea of going 1 through 16. To change a rule in the NBA like this, you got to get 20 votes.
Right.
Why would anybody from the Eastern Conference vote to go 1 through 16?
That's true. Yeah, why would you do that?
You could do it for the same reason that you just brought up, which is they also recognize it's cyclical, and maybe it is just better for competitive balance and in the interest of the league and not having what we consider to be far inferior teams going deep in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But Wendy's point is well taken. Look in the East. I mean, if you just look at the demographics or the geography or whatever the word I'm looking for is of the United States of America, the overwhelming majority of the people in this country live in the two easternmost time zones. So if you incorporate, like if you look at the way it's split, if you draw a straight line down the middle of the country or somewhere in the middle, like if you're using Chicago as the middle, Chicago is in the Eastern Conference. Dallas and Houston are in the West.
Right.
They're in the central time zone. But if you were to break it up that way, then, so many of your bigger markets are in the East. Now, they've generally been lousy. The Sixers have been terrible for a long time. The Knicks have been terrible forever. The Knicks have been terrible for a generation and a half.
They have.
So, that almost doesn't matter. But if you get them in the playoffs, they get knocked out immediately. But I think that's a really well-taken point by Brian Windhorst in that conversation.
It definitely is. And the other thing, I don't know if I've ever disagreed with you a lot on the show. We might have been about the new draft. No, not the All-Star game, Stanzik. Thank you. The draft, where the top three, bottom three.
Yeah.
That did nothing.
It did nothing.
It did nothing. Because now if you're the fourth worst team, what are you trying to do?
Become one of the three worst?
If you're the fifth worst team, the sixth worst team, you still want to try and do it. I don't really know what that accomplished.
It feels like a baby step. You're not wrong. It certainly isn't the solution to the problem. It does feel like a baby step in the direction of that solution. What I would be in favor of, I've said this, there are a couple of different ways you could do this. The first and foremost one, which was once upon a time called the Greeny Plan, will never happen because it would involve cutting the playoffs in half.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, right.
I would still be in favor, as crazy as this sounds to a lot of people, I'd be in favor of giving the best pick, the first pick in the draft, to the best team that misses the playoffs.
I know you said that, and I understand that, and I get it. The only thing I will say is, how are the bottom feeders going to get better? Because free agents aren't going to migrate there, especially when you can have the same dollars somewhere else. That was usually the determining thing in other sports on why a guy goes to a bad team. A team can offer more money, But with max contracts, the better players aren't going to go to those teams.
Do you know who had an idea to solve this? I'll tell you who had the best idea I've heard of anybody in all of this was Stan Van Gundy. I set aside an article, an interview with him. It's got to be at least a week ago now. I've had it in the notes every single day, and we've never gotten to it. But you bring it up, so I'll bounce it off you.
Okay.
He said if you want to create real parity, get rid of super teams and all this other stuff, do away with the max contract.
Oh.
Do away with the max contract, but leave the salary cap in place so that these guys can all team up because they're not going to make perceptibly more money anywhere else anyway. But if you did away with the max contract, so let's just say for the sake of argument, you might pay LeBron $30 million, $40 million,
right. So the
$50
cap's
million.
$120 million.
You definitely couldn't
not
afford, whatever it is, you couldn't afford to have more than one guy at that salary.
Right.
So it's all well and good for Kevin Durant to say, I'll go play in Golden State this year with all these other guys because whatever money I'm leaving on the table is comparatively minuscule. But if you're leaving $20 million, $25 million on the table, you'll sign in Oklahoma City. You'll sign in Indiana.
Well, aren't they doing that now?
Places.
Aren't they putting guys in position to make $50 million more?
That's just to stay with their own team.
Right.
But this would be literally as a free agent, where we right now say, well, a guy will never go sign in Memphis as a free agent. Well, how about if Memphis has $30 million to offer and no team in big markets do?
Yeah.
If you do go away, here's part of the quote. He says, I would get rid of the draft altogether. We would just deal with the salary cap. Make all rookies free agents coming in. If you want to give a guy $50 million a year, go for it. But you got to do it under the cap. If you did that and you had no individual max on players, we'd start to get parity in the league. But the league doesn't want parity. They want the super teams. It has worked well business-wise. So it was a really interesting thought. It's one of those that made me stop and say, huh.
That is interesting.
So let's play that out. And there was a stat, I think in this story, guys, that there had only been, I want to say 3 or 4 $30 million a year contracts ever given in the history of the league, and 2 of them were to Michael Jordan in 1-year deals that he got at the very end of his career. Right. And this offseason alone, there have been like 8 of them. I'm getting the stat wrong, but it was something like that, and it was in that very same story. And because they've extended this to, but those are max contracts. So what would a guy like LeBron be worth? I don't know. Make up a number. There's almost no way to overstate what he's worth.
Right, but you'd still have to worry about the cap.
Put guys around him.
Right.
So the realities, the finances of it, the capitalism of it, whatever the word I'm looking for, the economy of it, the economics of it, would balance it all out eventually.
It would, unless, obviously,
you'd figure out what you could reasonably afford to pay the best
player. How much you
player,
want to go over the top of your luxury tax and
whatever else it is. But that you would not get Kevin Durant going to sign with Golden State then, or very rarely would you get that, because Memphis has a $40 million to offer, and Golden State has $19 million to offer. Most guys are going to take the 40.
Yeah.
And that would really bring parity. That would give an opportunity to all of every single team the same. Like right now, given their druthers, guys don't want to go to Memphis. They don't want to go to Utah. They don't want to go to Indiana for all of the obvious reasons. They want to go to big markets and stuff like that. But if you created a system where no team has any economic advantage in that regard, it would be really fascinating to see what happened. What do you think?
One of the more interesting things on that is no draft. Just you immediately come out, so you get a one and done if you keep that. A 19-year-old who basically walks in as a free agent, never stepped a foot on the court, and is given a ton of money. It's like in the NFL before the rookie wage scale, when those top picks were guaranteed $50 million, or they're doing $50 million contracts.
But who would be willing to sign him to that? You know what I mean? Like, you might actually see a much more reasonable, maybe not what it is now.
What it is now, right.
But you might, are you going to give Lonzo Ball, if you got to fit it into your salary cap, if he's the one you've identified as the superstar, or Jason Tatum or Josh Jackson, or whoever it is that you like, Markelle Fultz, then what would you be willing to pay for?
Yeah, that would make your capologist. That would make your capologist work. That's for sure.
Listen, it's a fascinating thought. I don't know that it would work or it wouldn't, but I sure thought it was an interesting conversation.
That would change the business landscape. That's for sure.
Here's the stat: Russell Westbrook. This is the 8th deal this offseason. His contract, Westbrook's contract, is the 8th contract this offseason with an average annual value of $30 million or more. Prior to this offseason, there had only been 4 such deals ever, and 2 of them were Michael Jordan. Jordan got 2 individual $30 million a year contracts. So there have only been 2 others given in history. Hembo, I'm sure will be able to get that for us in a minute. And who were the other 2 besides Jordan? And there have been 8 of them. this offseason? If you have it, just say it in my head.
That is really interesting.
If not, someone will say it.
It's really interesting on where that would go. And the kicker is the rookies coming in of where you would find to pay them.
LeBron and Mike Conley were the other two. Okay. LeBron and Mike Conley were the other guys who had contracts with an average annual value. Conley had the biggest contract in basketball until this offseason.
Exactly.
And it's been surpassed, I think, by 5 or 6 different players. Yeah. Whatever. Anyway, do I think that stuff is going to happen?
No.
No, I certainly don't think that's going to happen.
It's interesting.
But it sure was interesting to talk about. All right, we're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Up next on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, this will be interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly is going on with that New England defense, and how quickly can they get it turned around?
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, you know, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
All right, we are Mike and Mike, and speaking of concern, a really good, interesting game tonight to kick off Week 5 on the NFL schedule as the Patriots go visit the Buccaneers. And for the early part of the season, New England's defense has really struggled. They've given up 300 yards passing in each of the 4 games that they've played. They are 2-2, and one of the guys that maybe they're missing is one of their terrific former players, 2-time Super Bowl champion Rob Ninkovich, is good enough to join us this morning here on Mike and Mike. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, guys.
Pleasure to have you. So, Mike, I'm going to let you ask X and O questions because that's what we got here.
First thing, before the X and O questions, have you gotten a call from the Patriots to maybe get out of retirement a little early?
No, I think they're kind of respecting my decision. Right now, I'm washing my truck. It's a lovely day here in New England. So,
there you go.
I'm enjoying my time. I've never had a September, October in my life, so as an adult to really enjoy it. So, and I'm also enjoying Mondays, Tuesdays, not feeling like I just got ran over by a truck. So, it's been different. It's not an easy adjustment, but at the same time, I felt like it was in the best interest for my family to get out while I had on my health,
What, and we totally respect that, of course. What are the Sunday mornings like for you? I mean, Mike has been out of it so long now.
Yeah.
You wake up on a Sunday morning. What, especially early here in this season, what thoughts go through your mind?
Well, I've been to a couple games. I went to 2 home games this year. And before a game, while you're a player, you have an anxiety. It's hard to explain, but you have to perform at such a high level, and to do it for 11 years, you always know that everyone's watching you and you're being judged every second that you're on the football field. So I really have enjoyed going into the stadium with a beer in my hand and not really caring about what people think about me, So I think that's been the best thing. But I wake up, I have breakfast, and I enjoy my family. That's my Sundays I cook, and it's great. It's great to be able to do that right now.
One thing, whether you're just out of the game like you are now, or I've been out for 25 years, whenever we go to a game or watch a game, one thing you'll always do is you'll watch it kind of as a football player in an analytical way. So on that note, since you've barely been out of this game, when you watch this Patriot defense now have trouble at times setting the corner, look like there's some communication problems in the defensive backfield, what are you seeing from a guy who was on the inside of that just a year ago?
Yeah, well, on top of watching the game, I feel like my blood pressure is probably very high when I see some of the things that are going on. They say communication, but I feel like it's chemistry. When you're with people for a long time, when I was with Mayo and I was with Hightower and Collins and Vince and all these guys, Dev, when you're with each other for year upon year upon year, someone can look at me and I know the situation, or I know if the inside backer has the running back man to man and there's a bunch set and there's a pick situation, I just take the back. It's just like, okay, he reads off me, I take the back, he adds in the rush. It's things that when you're with people for years, it's seamless. You say something to me, Jamie used to look at me and say, Rob. He wouldn't tell me anything, but he'd say, Rob. And I'd say, yep, I got you. And it was things like that when you have a new set of guys and they're young, when they haven't played together, it takes time to build chemistry. And I think that right now, they're searching to find the guys that can have that good chemistry with each other.
So how would that work then, Rob, with the players? Because I'm sure, and it's a point well taken, to kind of accelerate that. And maybe you can't, but what can the individual players do, and or Matt Patricia, the defensive coordinator, to try and help that situation along?
Well, I've been listening to the media and radio, and, everyone says, well, simplify. Well, the problem with simplifying a defense is a good quarterback sees a simple defense, and, if you play a simple defense against Tom, he's going to pick you apart. Okay, it's man. Okay, we'll run all our pick routes. We'll run all the routes that can beat man, so it's a fine line of, okay, you want to be playing fast and you want to, attack at all times on defense, but you have to be able to change it up. You have to run zone. You got to have different coverages. You got to be able to adjust with motion, through 1, 2 by 2, T-cup, bunch, all those things that come up. You have to be able to, boom, adjust to it within seconds. And I think, right now they're having issues with movement, and, it's hard to deal with that. And, when you have new guys, I say it every year, a rookie or a young guy, their year is extremely long. They don't have an off season. They go from college, they go to the combine, they get drafted. They don't have an off season. So right now, they're only hitting their fifth game. So come week 8, 9, 10, it's going to be tough. So, those young guys, it's going to be difficult to get through a full season, and that's not even with playoffs and with the expectations so high of, if you're in New England, you win a Super Bowl or it's a failure. That's a tough situation to walk into. So, I think they just have to work extra hard with, on the field, on the practice field, as much time as they can, within the rules, to work on all that communication and turn the music up, not be able to hear, because that's the hardest part when you can't hear.
Talking to Rob Ninkovich, a former Patriot, two-time Super Bowl champ, about this New England Patriot defense. One of the other things, and I'd love to talk to you forever about what's the hot thing now, is certainly in the NFL, the bunch formation and all the different things off of that and with coverage. But also you saw it in that first game against Kansas City, is something you did so well on that, but when you had your hand down, was setting the edge. And you saw time and time Kareem Hunt and others be able to bounce to the outside and get outside on this defense, something that this defense usually is so good at. So is that in your mind more of a physical thing, not so much guys not playing together for a while, but something physically going wrong on that defensive line or the front seven?
Well, I was a defensive lineman my whole life, so being on the line of scrimmage it's simple. It's like riding a bike. You get up on the line of scrimmage, I got a tackle in front of me. That's the guy that's trying to block me, or if they motion somebody, or a tight end, or a flash, or a receiver in a nasty position. Like, there's all those things that when I see that, I'm like, okay, this guy's a little tight. Maybe he's trying to down block on me. Maybe they're trying to pull to the edge. Maybe they're trying to do some things that can get to the edge. So you always have to be aware. And when you would pull me off the line of scrimmage, I felt like if you were to put me at inside backer position off the ball, it's like a completely different world. It's so much different because you have time, you have to press blocks, you have to take double teams off your lineman in front of you, and you have to tempo the ball. So it's hard to go from off the ball to on the ball. So guys that are from playing off the ball, like Benoit, who's an off the ball linebacker, he goes on the line of scrimmage. You have a split second to decide, okay, is this run pass? Is this guy trying to block me? Is this a flash? Or is it a wham? Is it a fullback? Is it power? Like, all those things that happen in a split second, you can't anticipate it by waiting a second to see it. You have to react to it and set the edge. So I also think it's just seeing those plays and developing, some type of awareness of, because I would be in a defensive end position, I'd see a guy come close to me, and I'd stand up and move outside of him. He'd look at me like, okay, crap, this guy just took away what I was trying to do to him. So, you have to be aware of those things and not get cracked. And, they happen to you. It's part of the game. I'm not saying I've let the edge up. I've had the balls get outside of me, and that's just the name of the game. But you just have to have an awareness of on the ball, off the ball. And it's very hard to go from off the ball to on the ball and stay on the ball, then get off the ball. So it takes years to kind of feel the way the play is developing. And there's guys out there doing it that have only played a couple weeks on the ball. So, teams are testing them. That's what teams do. The Patriots, they see a weakness, they attack it. So that's what other teams are going after the things that they think that, will be successful.
Patriots are allowing 6.5 yards per rush outside the tackles. That's more than 2.5 yards worse than the league average. So you talk about things, whether it's on the line or in the secondary, from communication to playing, whether on the ball, off the ball, and it takes a while. Use your words, sometimes years. For the Patriot fans out there, can they expect some changes by week 10? I mean, this is a group, a group in a locker room and a group in the stands that are used to seeing this team in AFC Championship games and Super Bowls, like every other year. So are these things you're talking about, can this team develop what they need to as the season wears on toward the end of the season?
Well, I can guarantee that Bill is pressing all those issues. Bill's the best coach to ever coach the game, and he understands the things that are going on. He knows, he's seen more football than most of us combined. He loves the game so much. He sleeps in the building, multiple nights a week. So he's going to attack those issues. I know he's making them work on communication. I know Matty P is emphasizing, you guys got to talk. You got to talk. You got to talk. You got to tell each other what's going on. Because most of the big plays that happen in the league across, every game this week that happen against the defense are usually communication errors. You see a receiver wide open, they don't plan that. They don't draw that up. Okay, let this guy go. So it's all communication, and it's understanding the communication. You can communicate and you can tell somebody something, but if they don't understand it, if I walked into a classroom in Germany and they're speaking German, I'm just going to sit there and, I hear you, but I don't understand what you're saying,
Such a good explanation.
Yeah.
Rob, we so appreciate you doing this. We'd love to check in again soon. In the meantime, enjoy washing your truck and all the other things you finally have a chance to do. And thanks very much for some time this morning.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, take care.
Mike, reminding you, if you miss any of the show, including Adam Schefter in Hour 3, you can listen to all 4 hours of Mike and Mike on demand in the ESPN app. And now you can subscribe to our Best Of podcast. It's available in the Listen tab of the ESPN app.
I want to get to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees in a minute here, but let me run through a couple of other things quickly for you. For the rest of the country joining us, Rob Ninkovich said a lot of really interesting things in that conversation, but it was the one he didn't say that struck me as the most significant. He didn't say, they'll get this figured out. Bill will get this thing coached up. I see. There's no question that with this little adjustment here or there, they'll be fine. He didn't say any of that. He painted a picture of a defense that might struggle for the majority of the season.
He painted a picture of he played on defenses where they had chemistry. They played for a while. I'm not going to go all the way on the overboard and say they're not the first defense that has had different guys have to fill in and get the job done. You're still a professional football player, and you can still learn what you need to do through reps, and maybe be helped by the system as well. So while I agree that was kind of where he was going, I'm not going full bore and saying, they're screwed this year. There's no way they can get that chemistry or figure out what's going on. They absolutely can. But to get to the point where his defenses were in that communication, that may be a while, but it doesn't mean they still can't become a better defense.
A better defense. And now they're giving up 6.5 yards outside the tackles. That's more than 2.5 yards worse than the league average. So right now they're a well below average defense. If they can become average, they can probably win a championship. Speaking of that, the bobblehead giveaway that Stace is doing today is related to the game. Now, how is Chris? Because you may know Chris and Stacy, our wives, are giving away the bobbleheads.
They are. Chris has 25 of them, and she is going to be ready on Sunday. She figured Sunday, so many people watch football. She is going to tweet out things on Sunday to get everybody. She is going to do it in a way where everybody has a chance. It's not just this or picture or that tweet, where everybody who tweets specifically what she's going to be talking about will have a chance to win a bobblehead, and she's going to give away 25 of them.
Okay, and Stace has 25 also. She did a few with the baseball, and she's doing a Caption This contest involving tonight's Patriot game that she'll pick 3 tweets in response from that. So you can get.
So we got a lot going on. And real quickly, I know we want to get to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah. My nerd pick, we're 2-2 now. The NPI Nerd Power Index, they went with the Cowboys at home over the Packers. basically by 1.3 points. That is the nerd favorite. I am going with the Green Bay Packers. I think they will go to Dallas, and I think they will get the win. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have himself a little bit of a day against that defense.
It's a really interesting game, obviously. So Golic versus the Nerds. He's got the the Packers on the road at Dallas. I needed to give you my one quick concern on the decision by Terry Francona.
Right.
It's all well and good with Trevor Bauer pitching game 1 and Corey Kluber pitching game 2 until there's a rainout. And the minute there's a rainout, you could wind up playing 5 games in this series and only getting your ace once. That's the real concern you have. If you have a rainout, and someone told me that there is a forecast of rain. I heard Chris Russo saying this on the MLB network yesterday, that there's a forecast of rain. Friday, is it, Hembo? We can look this up tomorrow.
There isn't.
In Cleveland.
It's all sunny.
It's
every
all
day.
foul. If that game gets rained out, all of a sudden you could wind up having to play a 5-game series and only having your ace pitch once. And that's the big concern that
I
you have
don't look
in a
at doom and
5-game
gloom
series.
of rain, okay? I don't go down that road.
Do you look at the weather report?
Yes.
If you look at the forecast and it rains, if that
Sunny.
game gets